Allan Gray here, Dial Ventures, back with you on the Dialed In podcast. Looking forward today to having a great conversation with Zach Tucker about what they do at Maple Leaf Farms regarding sustainability. So, Zach, thanks for being with us today.
Sure thing. Glad to be here.
So, in full disclosure, Zach, we know each other. We've known each other for a little while now. One part of a family that's been a big supporter of Purdue University for many years. A company that's critically important to food and agribusiness here in the state of Indiana, but also Zach is a student of the MSMBA program and chance to work together while you were in that class with me, and we even traveled to Brazil a bit together. So just want to let our audience know that, hey, we're not talking to somebody that nobody knows. I do know Zach pretty well. So Zach, thanks.
I was gonna say you get to know some people pretty well when you travel internationally with them. So it's a fun time.
Yeah, when we spend 6 days on a bus in Brazil, we're going to get to know each other pretty well, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I at least give some disclosure to the group about that. We do in fact know each other, but I think it'd be good, Zach, if maybe you introduced yourself. There's several things in your background that I think really led you to where you are today. So maybe you can give us a little bit of a rundown of who is Zach Tucker and how did he get to where he is?
Sure. Well, Zach Tucker. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility at Maple Leaf Farms. I've been here at Maple Leaf now for almost 12 years, right out of school. Purdue graduate in animal agribusiness, so that's where my undergrad was. And like Alan just said, I finished up the MSMBA in December for food and agribusiness with Purdue/IU. So that's kind of where my schooling's been at. But where I kind of come in with Maple Leaf is Maple Leaf is a family business, particularly my family. I'm a fourth generation family member of the company. Maple Leaf, we've been around for a while. Started in 1958. My great grandfather started it in '58. My grandfather Terry Tucker took over about 10 or so years later. Unfortunately, my great grandfather passed away from a sudden heart attack, very early age of 53, which was just very unexpected. But he took over and ran the ship for a while, and then about 2001, 2002, my dad and uncle took over as co-presidents from a day-to-day standpoint. And, I joined in 2013, and a number of other G4s have come in as well. So,
And Zach, tell me a little bit about what are the different roles you've played with the company?
So I started out, as my background would say, I was in animal science. So I started out in our live production department. I spent 6-ish years in the department there, running anything from our internal auditing program with our Trident stewardship program, biosecurity. So I was the biosecurity officer for a number of years there. Research, so coordinating research, whether that was internally or externally with academia or companies, things like that. As among other things, looking at like Poultry Science Association affiliations, things like that. So
when you're in the family business, Zach, I assume that your responsibilities, many of them, this is a professional organization. I don't want to underplay that. But also when you're in a family organization, you're one of the family members, you also do whatever grandpa and dad say this would be a good thing for you to be doing.
It's family business is an interesting dynamic, to say the least. You have to choose which hat to put on at any given point in time, right? So, you can look at, are you a family member that day? Are you an owner that day? Are you an employee that day? And you have to go into any number of places with the right hat on for that particular moment.
Right.
At the moment, my dad's CEO now. I report directly to him. And, one of the things with that is when we go into conversations, we got to determine like what hat is on. Is this father son talking here, or is this boss report that's talking? And sometimes that gets intermixed. You have to be careful there and try to compartmentalize as best you can. But as far as my dad and I look at this philosophy, we want it to be a conversation, because it's not just you need to go do this. It needs to be what is the
Right.
whole purpose of what you're doing, right? So, later on, after live production, he's like, we need to talk about what are some next steps for you, right? So I said, okay, this would be a good area. What do you think? I said, let's do it. So I went into our quality assurance department and ran our compliance, labeling and such for, regulatory, for a while there for several years. And then after that, I said, okay, it's probably time. We didn't do it quite as long or as quickly in live production as we probably should have. But after that, I moved into human resources there for a couple of years. So looking at, I mean, it was during COVID, right? So what was one of the biggest issues during COVID? The retention side of things was just a paramount issue. So they placed me over retention and some kind of connection with like recruiting and internal
Hmm.
work in that regard. So anything from like surveying to work on engagement programs, things like that. There was just a bunch to do there, trying to figure out how can we get people in that want to stay. And we definitely righted some ships there now, so it's a good thing. And then now that brings me to this role that I'm in. It was actually kind of a nice little transition into what I'm doing now as over top of sustainability and CSR.
Excellent. Excellent, Zach. You know, it strikes me as you and I are sitting here visiting, we've probably made an assumption we shouldn't make. I mean, look, Maple Leaf Farms is the leading company in its industry. But I don't think there's any doubt about that actually. But the issue would be, I'm going to guess that 85% of our audience doesn't know who Maple Leaf Farms is. What do you do?
So if we want to put a moniker on it, you could say we're North America's largest producer of duck. It's, you could maybe say Western Hemisphere. I think we could do that. I'd say the only area that we are deficient in is from a world standpoint is volume. That's it. You're going to have your China producers that are just knocking it out of the park in terms of volume, but that's not what we do here. What we're doing here is we have an integrated system where we're producing what we believe to be the best duck in the world, from an efficiency standpoint, livability. We have good ducks that are going to perform well, and I think goes very well with the sustainability piece of what we're trying to do in the world. Which, if we're talking sustainability, my kind of thought on that is if you want to boil it down, I want to do more with less at the end of the day. That's always been kind of my
Hmm.
thought, is how can we do more with less resources?
Hmm.
And our duck certainly does that.
Great, great, Zach. And so we're North America, at least. We'll be careful and say we're North America's largest duck producer, but it's an integrated system. So if I understand it correctly, we're from genetics of the duck to feed production to we have producers who feed these ducks out for us. We then harvest those ducks and we produce products, many of which are branded products
Hmm.
for the marketplace,
Whether it's
North
ours or
America and
private
beyond.
label.
What's
Yep.
that?
Whether it's ours or private label, we
Okay,
do
so
private label as well.
you do you do both of those.
Hmm.
I seem to recall one time having a conversation with your father. I was a bit fascinated by you. You maybe even sell some of your duck genetics to others.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, that's becoming a major part of our business. That's, it's been a number of years since we started doing that, but in terms of our strategy for it all, initially we were more so saying China was going to be the main focus, right? And China has become increasingly a more difficult environment to do business in,
right,
as an American company. Um, so we have tried to refocus what we did. 2015, we were actually doing stuff in China pre 2015, 2015 being when AI first really hit the United States from a commercial standpoint. From that point in time, it's pretty much been China shut down from an export import standpoint. And we've had some openings here or there, but it's just, we're like, why would we go through the hoops to get that back when we know it's probably going to get shut down 6 months later?
Right.
So we've refocused that livestock sales side on more places like Europe now, or even like some of the Middle East or North Africa. Egypt, for example, being a newer customer of ours, where we're looking at different producers there. Poland, Hungary are two options in Europe that have become really, big players for us. And with that, potentially even France is actually coming online. Believe it or not, during COVID, normally our duck, which is a Pekin duck, wouldn't be as readily acceptable in in France. Well, because of COVID, believe it or not, they started not having as much access to what they are traditionally, used to, your Millards, your Muscovies, what have you. And they said, well, we're going to give Pekin a try, and started to catch on more. So there's opportunity there. And then, we actually, one of our largest customers is in England. Uh,
Hmm.
so we've been working with them, gosh, better part of 20 years now. So
Great,
they
great.
just continue to grow. We're sold out this year for on that side. So that's not a bad deal.
That's a good thing. That's always a good thing, right? So tell
Mm.
me about Zach. Give the audience a bit of a perspective of. We've started down this path already of sort of scope, but scale and scope of Maple Leaf Farms, headquartered in Goshen, Indiana. I think, is that right?
Leesburg,
Leesburg,
just
in
south of.
Leesburg, yeah, in Leesburg, Indiana. But you have a few different plants in the U.S. You're selling animal genetics. How many producers do you have? How many plants do you have? Give me some sense of just sort of
So
scale and scope of the company.
so we have a large, a full-size genetic facility where that's where we're doing all our pedigrees. We have 7 pure line strains that we maintain from a company standpoint for genetic purposes. We have 3 hatcheries currently, one for genetic purposes and research, one main commercial hatchery, and then an overflow commercial slash livestock hatchery that we utilize. And we have several internal farms as well that we use for whether it's research or breeding purposes. And then as far as commercial, like contract producers, we're probably looking at about 180 right now.
Okay, okay. About 180
Mm.
different farmers feeding
Yep,
out your ducks for you. Okay,
yep.
okay.
Whether that's breeder or grower, because that's the one thing that you're going to find with our company is a lot, and you've only started to see it, even like Tyson, for example. I can't remember how many years ago when they purchased Cobb. They were really only doing the meat side of things, and they were buying the genetics from Cobb. And so they just said, well, let's just buy Cobb, and now we have a genetic company on hand. We've been doing this for 40 years.
Hmm.
And for us, it's been a huge part of our sustainability story, which is, how do we maximize the whole process? If you want to talk about a vertically integrated company, I would be amiss to not put us in that list of one of the more highly vertical companies for that
Right.
reason. So
Good.
um,
So you
from
got
there, yeah,
180 producers feeding how many plants?
we have 2 processing plants. We have a raw processing plant, or that's where the birds come in, and that's where you're going to have your whole body birds, things like that. And then we have a further processing plant. So
Mhm.
that'll be products like your boneless duck breast. That will be roast half duck, which has become one of our main flagship products over the last 10 years. Um, you name it, more the parts versus or further process versus just whole body. And then
Great.
we have a distribution center as well. So that one is a 6-story freezer that we have. I can't remember how many pallets we can fit in there. It's in the thousands of pallets that we ship out of every day of the week. So
That's fantastic. I know some other things about it. I'll share with them just because I find it fascinating. First of all, the duck is excellent, and actually um, easier to prepare than I had originally thought. Your dad taught me. He said, "No, this isn't that hard to do. You can produce this duck. You can grill these duck." He taught me how to grill them, and man, it's outstanding. Grilled duck breast is outstanding. But
once
you
you
have
get it, it's great.
it's tasty, isn't it?
Yeah.
And but you have down business, I think,
Hmm.
because the feathers turn into pillows and whatever else they do with that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
So that's one of the benefits of having of working with waterfowl. You look at like chickens, turkeys. It's not easy to necessarily get rid of your feather waste, right? And the inability to utilize feather meal like you used to doesn't help things either. So like, what are they doing with it? We do not have to do that. We have subsidiaries up in Grand Rapids. The Eurasia Group is what we call it. But so you have Eurasia Feather Co. and Down Incorporated. So Eurasia is more of a feather broker. So they're bringing in feathers from all over, not just our own, and or selling them. And then Down Incorporated is doing finished goods. So comforters, pillows, down blankets,
Right.
and we're even working a really cool opportunity here. We're actually working on it's a it's an organic fiber, right? So it's a truly like hypoallergenic product, so to speak, where we take fiber that we already have and we can create this product that is natural, but also uh, has like none of what you might have from like an allergen standpoint with like a feather pillow, because the feather pillows will trap dust sometimes or things like that. I'll be the first, to admit that it can happen. But this product is wonderful because that's what a lot of people, especially from like a fill standpoint for say like a couch pillow or something, they want this, and we can do that now. And we're doing some incredible stuff up there where we can ship next day products out now because of the investments we've made up there, which is for the type of products we make is pretty unheard of in the industry. So it's becoming a player for us.
It's just fascinating, Zach. Your company, uh, leading duck company in North America, highly vertically integrated, very successful company, recognized brands, excellent quality in your products, and you think about how you utilize every single piece of that process to advantage, which I think is sort of this definition of sustainability. So I want to switch gears and go there, and
Okay.
I'm going to ask you directly your title. Director of Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility.
What
What
does it
is
mean?
that?
Yeah, for some reason, I laugh about this. We like our titles here at Maple Leaf for some reason. I it's like what? Okay, like it's a big title, whatever. But what it boils down to is, we have to focus on a number of things. Obviously, we want to like the sustainability side of it all. We can talk even further in detail about that. But like I said, like I want to always be moving us forward in terms of are we able to do more with our processes with less resources, less, whether that's man hours, whether that's feed, water, you name it, right? So those are the things we focus on. But so one thing that I'm focused on as well is actually the aspect of culture within the company, right? And I think part of it, deals with the sustainability where we're trying to build a sustainable culture. Both we want it to continue to be in a certain way, but also sustainability as part of that culture. So we have four pillars that we look at in terms of our CSR program. That's uh, environmental sustainability, ethical responsibility, philanthropy, and financial responsibility, right? So environmental sustainability, that's what a lot of people would think of as your traditional or part of your traditional sustainability, and that you're managing the environmental side of it all. Ethical responsibility, right? You're dealing with like the people side of it all. Are you taking care of your people? Are you making sure that they have opportunities for growth and development? You name it. Philanthropy, I think that's pretty straightforward. You want to have the community side of it all, and ethical goes with the community side as well. But I look at the philanthropy as the community piece, and what are you doing in it? Are you recognized in the community for whether it's philanthropy, service, those sort of things? So that's part of that building that community service minded culture. And then financial responsibility is more so the ethical side of business versus the people side of it all. So looking at, are we reporting things the way we're supposed to? Are we doing what we say we do from a business standpoint? That sort of stuff. So, and I'm not the one running these things, right? That is something that everyone is supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis. More so what I am is I'm the one who's trying to verify and that we're doing that. And if we're not, how do we fix that? How do we change that? So it's more so putting extra emphasis on where we want to be, from a culture standpoint.
So, sort of in some ways, like a continuous improvement
Yeah,
approach. So,
yeah,
this is a little bit of your quality background coming into saying, okay,
absolutely.
are we doing sustainability in a quality, in a high quality way, perhaps?
Yeah, no, it's you look at, and I'll use the term ESG, right? For environmental social governance, we certainly can match up with that with the way we're looking at these things, right? With the environmental side, the social side, and the governance. So it's a way that we can, look at it and match up with that because there are a number of people in the industries and, out in the world who really want to look at that piece of it, the ESG side of it all. So,
Right.
um, yeah.
Zach, can you make this um, philosophy that you have here, these values that you express, these four values, four pillars you talk about, bring that to life for me. Can you tell me a story or two about here's how this looks at Maple Leaf? And if you're willing to, maybe one story that's, man, here's a win, here's a big success we've had, and here's a story about where we're still challenged to figure out how
hmm
we're going to do that.
So for example, like the environmental sustainability, right? That could mean any number of things. That could mean we're just simply being good stewards of our environment. So like, what are we doing with water management, waste management, those sort of things. But other sides of it all are like maybe the green energy side of things. So I'm looking at like a solar project right now. Where could that be a benefit to us? Whether it's producing energy for ourselves or eventually being a producer of green energy. There's an opportunity there. Ethical engagement is a really important aspect within our company, right? And this kind of goes along with philanthropy too, but um, well, actually, I'll leave it for philanthropy. So ethical responsibility, training wise, we've actually developed these training programs recently where when I was in HR, I started this process where we, with a couple other people, and we had started with one level of training, which is kind of this introductory, hey, we're getting some managers and supervisors in here. Let's get some just engagement here with the training side of things. Well, we've since added two more training levels to it, where there's a second level, which is more engagement for those individuals that were in there before, and it's much more. There's project based aspects to it, and then the third level is for people who have been targeted for the sake of potential upper management eventually, and saying like these people are going to go into that, and they've also expressed interest, I should say. So it's a two-way street in that
Mhm.
regard. So those are some of the things there. We want to make sure that people feel like they have the ability to grow with us in the business. Uh, Philanthropy, that could be any number of things, whether it is supporting an organization. We're we're currently giving a pretty sizable gift to an organization in our town called Joe's Kids, which is a children's therapy company in town. So doing speech, physical therapy for children, and it's one of those that pulls in kids from any number of surrounding counties, and they had the ability to go from a very rather small location to now they have a very sizable location that they're able to service so many more children that way. So there's one there. Another one in that regard is I'm revisiting how we do our giving as a company as a whole. I'm thinking about how can I drive engagement through philanthropic giving. And what I mean by that is can I set up tiers based upon, what the level of employment you're at, whether you're a manager or just in the the front lines, in the plants, and say, hey, like you are allotted X amount of dollars every year that Maple Leaf will donate on your behalf, and saying, hey, where do you want this money to go? And actually having that engagement. They're part of our stakeholder group, and we want them to feel like they have some control and direction of where things are going. And so know that things that they want to support, we're going to support.
That's really cool because that's really sort of driving the culture of saying, "Hey, we want sustainability, ESG sorts of concepts to be a part of who everybody in our organization is."
Yeah.
And we'll help you do that by saying, "Hey, well, let's think about how we want to donate and where you think you want to have that kind of impact in a social sort of way with ESG." Really, that's really cool, Zach. I think
And that's
that's
the thing about, with sustainability and such, there is an aspect which you have to have it ingrained in your culture at the end of the day. So that's why, I'm helping to direct culture now, is because of that fact. It has to be hand in hand, because if no one actually believes in it, it's not going to work. And then
so.
financial responsibility. One cool thing that I'm excited, I'm looking to do is, we're hoping to do an employee assistance fund here in the future, where it'll be, through like a local organization that handles, funds or trusts or things like that, and being able to set up a trust for the benefit of our employees for when things like might go awry in their lives or something of that nature. I bet, like that's kind of down the pike a little bit, but that's something I think we as a local employer can really make some huge headway with our employees, knowing that we have their back in the case there's like a major issue that happens in their lives, like a fire or something like that.
That's again fascinating stuff that you're leaning into and really sort of culture driven in all four areas. I think is really fantastic. But Zach, let me be a fly in the ointment for a moment and get
Yeah.
down to the brass tacks of this. Not everybody thinks about sustainability, ESG, regenerative agriculture, climate smart, whatever we're going to call it
hmm
today, as necessarily good business, right? And so I'm curious about because of your experiences. One, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I get the sense you don't necessarily agree with that, but maybe you do. But tell me a little bit about. Let's start. First of all, your company interacts an awful lot with folks that are producers. I think
hmm
many of the producers who feed ducks for you also do other things in agriculture as well. Tell me a little
Certainly.
bit about sort of the business of sustainability in agriculture. What's the sense of your growers with respect to this? How do y'all try to engage that group in your sustainability efforts? Tell me a little bit about that.
So there are a number of ways we look at that, right? What one we're bringing our producers in on an annual basis, and we'll meet with them, and we talk about whether it's our performance, whether it is things going on in the world, right? That we need to be aware of, potential practices, those sort of things, right? So even if it's, I'll give you an example. Even if it's not required by law based upon sizes of facilities, right? From like a CAFO, CFO standpoint, um, our producers have, like nutrient management plans for the facilities, right? Because we want to make sure that we know where the manure is going, where it's spreading. We give our farmers the ability to utilize their, that manure that they produced on their farms. We're not taking it from them. So that's a great opportunity for them to utilize in their other endeavors, right? So, I mean, they've got fields to spread on, and there's one opportunity right there that we have. And we also,
And let me just follow up on
yeah,
that, Zach. So they get, you're not going to take that from them. They get to utilize it. It's a
mhm,
great benefit to them, but you want to know what they what their plan is with it, what they're doing
yep,
with it.
yep, because
Okay.
we want to make sure that we're not just all willy-nilly spreading everywhere. We have to be good stewards for our neighbors' sake and our environment's sake. We can't just be spreading anywhere. One of the things that we've pushed with them is we've incentivized them for a number of things over the years, whether it's that, whether it is making sure that when we build barns, or maybe even retrofitting it when we have pits, for example, with our barns, actually having covered pits as opposed to open pits. The lagoon system is not, or is not something we like to see anymore. It's just not a good standpoint from an environment, potentially environment, I should say. If you say you have a heavy rain and you're really full, you're having some runoff there. But also smell, things like that. So, we've incentivized them any number of ways over the years to work with us on things that we're bringing up as things come down the pike towards us from an environmental standpoint, or what have you.
Do they fight you over these things?
There can be moments where there's some testiness for sure over some of these things, because it's it might be something they don't understand initially, or that's just new to them. They're not aware. But I think we've got a really good team here that does a great job of being able to explain it all. And I got to give a lot of props to our field tech team, right? And we have good relationships with our farmers, with their field techs. They're visiting them, rather frequently. Less when AI is around, because frankly, sometimes it's not worth the risk going there more. But yeah, it's part of those good relationships and explaining it to them, and that's why we like to bring them in, for dinner and meetings where we can say, hey, like, we want to talk about this with you. We want to explain why what's the why, right? Because so often you can just tell anyone, hand out edicts and say, hey, we're doing this, and we don't want to do that. We want to be good partners in this. We want to make sure that we're continuing to support our farmers, whether that is, with increased cost of production, are we keeping in line with their pay, so on and so forth.
Great, great. So I wanted to pursue this a little bit because it's a group that's not it's not really your employees,
No.
right? This is sort of your suppliers that you're trying to get them to come along with you on this journey. So you got to take a little bit different approach to that.
hmm
It's different when it's a collaborative. It needs to be a collaborative activity.
it's the selling side, one of the selling sides of live production, right? When you're working with a contract producer, you have to be able to sell ideas and practices within that process. So, but um,
And also, Zach, to be fair, and incentives. I mean, I hear you saying incentives. I don't know that that's always money, but sometimes it is. It may be co-investment in some of the things that you need to do, right?
there can certainly be, like, if we're running like a trial or a study with something, there's going to be some benefit and some capacity, typically for someone, right? We don't want to throw them off if they're unwilling to do it, or if they're not going to get some form of benefit to it. So,
Right.
and we have annual awards too, that are based on performance. So high performers will get incentivized, right? It's in a bonus type structure.
Right. Good. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about
hmm
Maple Leaf Farms business. So, do a lot of the things you've talked about, I think, are great. I put them in the category of doing good, and we should. We have corporate responsibility. We have a responsibility as good citizens to do good.
Yeah.
Why is doing good, and the examples you've given, why is doing good good business?
Well,
What makes it? I think maybe think about it a different way, Zach. If I'm the CEO, I'm saying, Zach, what's the return on our investment in you and the things you're doing?
well, I think at the end of the day, this is, there's both internal and external aspects of which doing good business benefits, right? So internally, as any employee, they want to be working for a company that they feel like is making a difference, doing good in some capacity. You can only work. I feel like you can only work for a company so long that you don't feel like is doing the right things, right? Like, if you're like, oh, this company is breaking the law or doing something, you really don't want to work for that company. Like, you don't have that loyalty to that company, because like, you're not giving them the loyalty of being an ethical company and being someplace that you should want to work for, right? Like, there's part of that. You should want to be that beacon of a company that people want to work for them. So internally, you want people to feel proud of where they work, and they want to feel like this is that their values are part of are matching up with your values. Externally, whether that is there are any number of people that or entities that you could be talking about, whether it's your community, right, where you live, right? If people see that you're not a good upstanding business, what's going to happen? There, other people aren't going to want to work for you. People, your reputational risk right there. Same thing with like investors. If you're not doing good business, investors, whether you're looking for, or whether that's investors where you're looking for a potential like partnership, or if you're looking at strictly debt financing, that's they're going to find some of those things out, and it's not going to go well for you. So there's that aspect. And uh, reputationally, you don't want to be having poor business practices, because it's a snowball effect. At the end of the day, it gets worse. That Did I answer your question?
I think so. I mean, I think so. Certainly, I understand the idea of doing good. My question is, will somebody pay more for your product because you're doing good? Is that how
It
you think
depends.
about it? Or
I think it depends, right? When I look at sustainability, there's certainly going to be potentially be an upfront charge for what you're doing, depending on the practice. Are you having to put in new equipment that benefits your process, right? And will people pay more? I don't know. There was we just recently, if you weren't aware, we were in some chicken products as well at one point. We were doing some chicken products, and we actually exited that market. And, it was for a number of reasons. It was difficult to do that anymore from a food safety standpoint. Basically, with the whole salmonella framework, reduction framework going on, this is the first category that they looked at, and they said you got to have zero in there.
Hmm.
Well, these products aren't cooked products, right? And buying chicken or getting chicken on the market, even if you're buying category one, which is what we were doing, USDA category one, it still has up to 7% penetration of salmonella in it. Well, that's a problem, because then, it's either A, you have to put it into a cooked operation, which we did not have a cook operation for chicken. We're using that for duck. And then two, you have to essentially cook it, right? You actually just have to cook the product, whether you can take the product that you weren't using and put it in, or just have a straight cooked product from the beginning. And we've done testing on that, and for that particular product, no one wanted to buy a product that had a higher, a better safety aspect to it with being cooked. No one wanted to buy it for the price. And to answer your question is, yeah, you can do good, and you can try and offer this, product that in theory people should want, right? It's a safer product in the sense of, because I mean, let's be honest, that product was typically going to be microwaved in some capacity, even though it
Hmm.
shouldn't have been. Um, it You try to do good, but it doesn't always work out, and it kind of comes back to the whole idea of you have to, if you want to look at sustainability, right? But you can't miss the forest for the trees, in the sense of you still have to search for profit in a business. Without profit, all the good things that you do are for naught.
Yeah, I think that's a really important
Yeah.
call out. Sustainability includes, hey, the business has to be sustainable, which means it's going to have to be profitable. So I think that's a really good example where you had
Yep.
to exit a product because what would be the right sustainable product to produce is just not economically sustainable. So it just
No,
can't
there's different
happen.
aspects of it, right? You could have the environmental sustainability side of something that's great, but does it economically match up for you? Because I mean, like I said, look, working on a solar project, I don't know if it's going to be, we're not at that point yet. I don't know if it's going to be economically viable in terms of an ROI yet. I don't know. If it's not, then, I can't just say, oh, we're going to do this and it's going to hurt the company. Like, that's from a fiduciary responsibility. I can't in good conscience do that.
Yeah.
social wise, that could be, a number of things, like we could have improved benefits or something like that. But to what extent do we want to do that? Because if it's too much to the point where we are actually like getting hurt for it, and we're suddenly losing money, that becomes a problem. As much as we want to help people. Now, okay, I could go in a tangent as far as what are the intangible benefits of helping your people, because at the end of the day, if you give benefits to your people, like I'm looking at, what are we looking at from like childcare, daycare, after school care type stuff? What benefit does that help our people to the point where that helps keep their house in order? And what does that mean in terms of what they're bringing to work every day? Because if your
Yeah.
house is in order, I truly believe if people's houses are in order, they're going to bring a better version of themselves to work.
And that's likely to pay off. And those are some places where
Yeah,
we invest in the social side of things, our
yeah.
people side of things, where sometimes it's hard to calculate the exact ROI for it, but generally we know that, or we think
You
we know
get a
there's
good
a point
return on those
there.
typically.
Yeah, typically you can get a good return on those. That's right.
Yeah, and then
Uh,
just economic development, right? In terms of like new automation projects, right? You can sit there and say, hey, we're just installed a machine where you're going from doing X amount for a whole day to suddenly you're doing the same amount in a matter of a shift, right? Like that type of situation is an economic sustainability standpoint, right? Where you are truly doing more with less at that point.
right, right,
So.
right. Very good. Tell me, Zach, what's your vision of the future? Where is this idea of sustainability in the food and ag sector? Where's that going?
Well, I definitely don't think it's, any of this stuff is going away. I think you're going to see, different variations of it. You're you're seeing more emphasis on some of the emissions type stuff right now, in terms of sustainability. I know we're working towards that stuff right now ourselves. It's not it's a newer thing. I don't know, what that's going to look like. I think it's going to continue for a number of years for sure as we look at this further. Um, I think there's still a
So,
lot
so,
of,
so in that space, Zach, y'all are starting to think about how you're measuring your carbon footprint or what your greenhouse
yeah.
gas emissions are, your scope one, scope two, scope three. Y'all
hmm
are y'all are thinking about that sort of stuff too.
that stuff is definitely kind of in our minds right now as far as what that's looking like. Investing in programs that we can better uh, calculate those things, understand that, and compare it against any number of frameworks. Um, just so we're aware of it. And because right now, as a private company, we're not expected to necessarily be reporting on a lot of these things. We're not, but we want to be out in the forefront of it just so we're aware. And we're aware. And then if it does come time that there's more uh, expectations of information, then yeah, like we're there. But what you're going to see, in my opinion, is you're going to see more companies for a while, unless there's some form of pendulum swing back the other way. You're going to see more emphasis on some of these science-based type targets, or those sort of things for emissions reduction, temperature reduction, those sort of things. You're seeing it in a number of companies, in terms of expectations, starting to pop up more. Uh, I know Walmart, for example, I believe it's voluntary right now, but like Project Gigawatt, right? I believe is what it's called,
Hmm.
right? That's
Yep.
one. I know Aldi's working on some of that stuff too in terms of science-based targets. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that we have to have on our radar to think about in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, because some of these folks are your downstream customers, right?
Absolutely.
And do they have these conversations with you, or you're starting to end up having a conversation with them, saying, "Hey, where are you on this? What are you
We're
doing in
starting
this space?"
to we're starting to see it as well. So it's getting the push. I think you'll continue to see some of this push. I will admit sometimes I do have some hesitancy when it comes to thinking about these things, because anytime I go to one of these, like a conference, anytime I see a talk on, whether it's like emissions, these sort of things, I'll admit sometimes I'm a little skeptical because no one can really tell me how what we're going to be doing actually will do what they say it's going to do. Anytime that I've asked the question, people will kind of just brush me off, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm not saying it isn't an important aspect that we're keeping an eye on what we're doing from a pollution standpoint, from emissions. But I think some of the messaging that's been done over the years has been not as good, and why you have so much um, hesitancy on one. You've got a group of people who are very hesitant with like the scope stuff and emissions and the green movement, and then you got another side that's all gung ho on it. And it's like, can we not find some middle ground here? Because people want to know how it's going to be done. People get why it's going to be done, right? But it's like, how does this work? And I think if we can figure out how it's going to work and how it's not going to hurt companies, because like I said, we have to make sure if companies, aren't making a profit and they go under, what was the point of doing something?
Yeah.
Now, what was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
point? So, because that's the problem is it is not exactly, it's still pretty cost prohibitive for many companies to get into some of this stuff.
Well, I think you hit on an important point there that we see happening in Dow Ventures as well as we look into this space, right? You have outcomes on one side, and generally speaking, there are differences. Different people want different kinds of outcomes, but
Sure.
generally speaking, they're all sort of, hey, let's do good for, in this case, what we're talking about, mostly the environment, but hey, let's do good for the environment. Let's do good for people. Let's do good for society, right? Let's make sure companies behave good, all the sort of ESG components. And generally speaking, I don't think there's much argument over that. The question is the how, and then whether or not it's dictated to us or there's opportunities or there's incentives for changing the behaviors that would lead to some sort of an outcome. And one, or do we even know what those behaviors are that would actually lead to the outcomes that we're trying to get to? And two, okay, and how are we going to make sure that those things get incented properly? It seems to me like that's a big issue in this industry,
That
in
that's
this
the big
part of this
industry.
industry right now.
Yeah, that's the big issue because I I don't think you're gonna talk to few, whether you're talking just your family farmer, out there, or a conglomerate type situation where people are actively going to be like, forget the environment, types. No one's going to do that. People want to be good stewards of the environment generally, right? I like to think, you're going to have a very large majority of those people are like, yeah, we want to protect the environment. We don't want to pollute things purposefully. But yeah, like when it comes time for, whoa, well, we need to do our own part. Well, it's like, well, okay, but what, but
Yeah,
how? Like
yeah,
how do we do that? And is it
yeah.
is it worth the cost or the time? Or, well, I guess you could look at it both ways. Time is money, but like, is it worth it at the end of the day versus, the impact it will have? So I think what will hopefully happen over the next 5 to 10 years is we will see better understanding of what the impact is from some of these programs, from some of the early adopters of these types of programs, and hopefully we see some form of better science-based information that says, hey, like this is actually doing this for us right now, and this is the benefit. That's what I'd like to see at least, because then I think it's a lot easier to sell any number of ideas at that point if you have actual information of saying, hey, like this is working for us, and here's how we know it. I don't know, but
Sounds to me like somebody who speaks from experience of doing the things you're doing now to do good business and how you've had to sell that throughout your organization of the things that we're doing, but you're able to explain to people how and why together, and that's how you're able to move Maple Leaf Farms forward in their sustainability efforts.
well, we one of the things we state, right, is we talk about our sustainability program. We want it to be ethically grounded, scientifically verified, and economically viable. Okay, those are the three main things. When I look at ethically grounded, and I guess even scientifically verified, right? I do not want us to be a company that's accused of greenwashing at the end of the day, right? I don't want to be, we're doing these things, but we're not actually doing anything. If we're gonna do something, if we say we're gonna do something, we better do it. Otherwise, again, that's just lying to people's faces at that point
Right,
if we're not.
right.
So,
Zach, excellent discussion here. Really appreciate it. Listen, I got one last question for
yep,
you. You're not prepared for this. I didn't give it to you ahead of time or anything.
rapid
But Zach,
fire.
I'd like to ask all of my guests before I finish up. If you had to pick one theme song, what's your theme song, Zach?
Theme song. Ooh, that's a good question. I might have to do a quick little look here at what I got up going right now.
Yeah, what's on your playlist?
Well, okay, I'll go with one just because, being a dad of two little girls, Penelope and Ariana, my wife and Gabby and I are always finding our phones are littered with the kid music, but like some of the stuff's not too bad, right? So, uh, my daughters love Trolls, right? The movie Trolls, and so Can't Stop the Feeling is a pretty good one, right?
Can't
Uh,
stop the feeling.
just try and keep moving, stay positive, and keep it's not bad. Can't stop the feeling.
You
It
know what?
feels
I was gonna ask you. I thought about that, and I thought, no, I won't ask him. But I will tell you, I'm not sure if it was "Can't Stop the Feeling," but it might have been. I think I might have heard a song like that one on the bus in Brazil.
it's very possible. Yeah, it's if certainly I'm known to sing here or there. I had the opportunity to sing a little bit um, at Marcus's
At Purdue.
house.
Yeah.
Well, no, I sang down in Brazil, right? So
Oh, that's right.
yeah,
Yep.
so I got an opportunity to sing a little bit, and it's always been kind of one of my little things I do, whether it was choir or musicals, drama, those sort of things. So yeah,
Great, great. Well, Zach, again, thank you for the time today. Appreciate you talking to us. Really love Maple Leaf Farms. I really love the fact that you make duck because hardly anybody does it, and I love duck. But you're doing it in a sustainable way that's really trying to have real impact on the environment, on people, and still keep your business strong. I think that's really, really fantastic stuff. Congratulations on the things you've done so far.
thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. Been
You
fun.
bet.